Between early November and mid-January, mental health referrals tend to skyrocket by like 20 to 30% easily, pretty much everywhere I have worked in this field. And there's a ton of reasons for this. We got the colder weather, lack of sunlight, lack of outdoor time, increased pressure to socialize and attend large gatherings, or loneliness and isolation that comes with not having stuff to go to. It's a very, very notoriously difficult time of year for many people. Dealing with one or more mental health conditions compounds these difficulties because the stakes are higher for us. The drop in mood that many people experience around this time of year can be the start of a lengthy mental health episode for us. And by the way, whoever named seasonal affective disorder and made it the acronym SAD is kind of a monster, but also kind of hilarious. Anyway, that aside, if you have a chronic mental illness, winter and the holidays are probably basically like your Super Bowl or your World Series. It's going to be most likely the most difficult period of your year, but also arguably the most important. And if you can, quote, win this season of your life, you can get 2025 off to a very, very good start. And so today I'm going to review a large number of techniques. I don't even remember how many. There are a lot of them that I use and have been using for over a decade to help my clients get through this time of year in one piece, more or less. These are also, for the most part, techniques that I use. I am no hypocrite. I don't ask people to do things I wouldn't do. So this is also my personal survival guide, 2024 survival guide for the holidays and winter for mentally ill people. The first one I already kind of mentioned, but it's really, really critical. Remember that you are not alone. This time of year, at least in like Midwestern USA where I live, is sold to us as like this happy, family oriented, like wonderful, magical time. And like sometimes it is that, and sometimes it is not that, and sometimes it is the farthest possible thing from that. If you dread this time of year for any reason, and there's a number of valid reasons to feel that way, you might, if you turn on TV or you get on social media, you might feel like, gosh, am I the only person that like doesn't enjoy this, that dreads it or finds it sad or depressing? No, you are not. Again, 20 to 30% increase in mental health referrals during this time. You are not alone. You may not see a lot of people out there saying it, but please do not think that you are the only one feeling this way. Just remembering that this isn't just a weird you thing, like you're not like the Grinch. I think that's really helpful. So please try to keep that in mind. Everybody I know, second idea here, everybody I know who usually does well mentally and emotionally during this season has at least one winter activity that they legitimately enjoy. Now, I know you guys live in all kinds of different places, and winter may not mean like cold and snow, depending on where you live, but I think for a lot of you it does. Everyone I know that like looks forward to this time and enjoys it has a winter hobby or more than one winter hobby. I know that saying like just find something you like is easier said than done. I also know a lot of people don't even, I think, really try. They just assume I hate this time of year, it sucks, I'm not going to enjoy it. And they don't even like give things a chance. So whether you're into like ice fishing, skiing, snowboarding, there's so much stuff that you actually can do during the winter, much of which you cannot do at other times of year. If you can just find one thing, it doesn't even have to be your favorite thing in the entire world, something that gives you this ability to say like, I know it's cold, I know the days are short, I know there's a lot of things coming up, but like I at least have this. I can at least look forward to this. It's so helpful. So if you don't have anything like that, I'm sure you can just find like just look up like what do people do in the winter? How do people enjoy living? There's people that live in places where it's winter like 6 months a year, and many of them are happy. Look at how do people in Alaska live? What do they do for fun? It's not automatically a miserable time of year. You can find things. You might just have to try a lot and be a little bit open-minded with that. Remember, this one gets more around holidays and people. Remember that you are not responsible for managing other people's emotions. Holiday gatherings in particular tend to be a time of year when the more sensitive and empathic among us tend to feel a strong need to like keep the peace and manage the feelings of other people around us. Try not to fall into this trap. Other people's emotions are their property. Like they belong to them just as much as their house and their car. You cannot have responsibility for something that you do not have agency over. And you do not have agency over other people's emotions. You don't even have full agency over your own emotions. You can't just choose what to feel. You cannot make somebody sad or angry or disappointed. Now, don't like intentionally antagonize people, but if people are reacting negatively to you just existing or having, the values or personality traits that you do, that's not your fault. It's also not your problem. Those reactions are in other people's boundaries. They belong to them, and those emotions are theirs to manage. Whitney Goodman has a podcast called Calling Home. She would be a really good resource to look into around this time of year because she talks a lot about dealing with complicated family dynamics. But one of the things she said, I'm probably not going to quote it quite right, but I'll get the gist of it right, is that families and family gatherings often cater to the least agreeable family member. And if you find certain family norms or traditions or dynamics frustrating or even like toxic or unhealthy, and you try to break away from them and change what you consider to be an unhealthy way of living that was passed down through generations, you will probably become the pariah. You will probably become the black sheep. People will be like, why are you being like this? Why can't you just go with the flow? Why can't you be easygoing? Well, it's because I'm trying to make things better. It's not your responsibility to make everyone around you happy. And that's just as true on Christmas as it is on May 7th or any other random day. Ask and answer the question, will it ruin the holidays if, and then fill in the blank. The more anxious among us tend to feel a lot of performance anxiety around the holidays, whether that's around preparing food. If you're hosting, I mean, hosting can be a big stressor, don't get me wrong. Picking out the right presents for people, just acting a certain way around people, the social pressure. There's a lot of performance expectations around the holidays. However, a large proportion of those performance expectations are self-imposed, and we often fall into very perfectionistic tendencies around this time of year and think, if we don't have everything just right, if we don't, cook this exact meal and have it ready at this time and have XYZ decorations up, the holidays are ruined. But it's often more like this unspoken feeling that we have. And if you actually pull that feeling into your consciousness and look at it and evaluate it, you'll often see this is pretty ridiculous. It's not going to ruin the holidays if I do this. Like, if I burn the turkey, I will order pizza. And maybe that's not what people would prefer, but a year from now, we'll laugh about it. And maybe it'll even become a tradition. Maybe next year, we'll have pizza with the turkey because it'll be this fun memory of the time I burnt the turkey. Wasn't that silly? Like, it doesn't have to be so serious and somber all the time. These things can be more enjoyable if you can take a more lighthearted approach to it. And asking and answering that question will help. Another thing that will help decrease your anxiety, decrease perfectionism, and decrease the general sense of pressure that is very common around this time of year is reducing your caffeine intake. Unless you're new to this channel, you've heard me say this many times, but caffeine and anxiety are not necessarily super good friends. Caffeine basically just makes your brain do more of what it is already doing. And so if what your brain is already doing is producing a lot of anxiety and worry, caffeine has a tendency to amplify that. I'm not saying you should go completely caffeine free, although it's something that's worth thinking about. Another option would be to supplement or replace some of your caffeine intake with a low stimulant substitution. A product I am a particularly big fan of, and I've mentioned it on this channel before, is something called Magic Mind. This is Magic Mind. It's a mental performance shot. So it kind of looks like one of those like 5-hour energy shots, right? Two big differences. One is it's not loaded with caffeine that's going to make you jittery and anxious and give you a racing heart. The other is it's not disgusting. I know that's very opinionated, but I think those things are nasty personally. This tastes fantastic. It basically just tastes like you're drinking nature and green tea, and it's absolutely delicious. I have gone down to between 1 and 0 cups of coffee per day, and I use a Magic Mind shot 7 days a week. And by the way, I bought that with my own money. They did initially reach out to me. They sent me my first batch. I liked it so much that I subscribed. So I am a Magic Mind subscriber and I continue to benefit from this. It does help me get focus and concentration without all of those side effects that come with excess caffeine intake. I've also completely cut out my pre-workouts. Those were not good for me, frankly. Um, they kind of made me feel like I was in a John Woo movie and doing like a bullet time thing. Not a fan. Magic Mind is made with natural ingredients. It's herbs, it's mushrooms, it's vitamins. The vitamins is kind of a double, sort of a two birds with one stone thing, because I'll talk about this more in a second, but our nutrition and vitamin intake also tends to suffer during the winter months because we don't get outside as much, we don't get sunlight as much. Our eating habits tend to change. There's some interesting cultural norms with that. I think there could be a lot of value in integrating Magic Mind into your daily routine over the winter and probably using it to reduce some of the anxiety provoking caffeine that we tend to over rely on during these shorter, darker days. I said I was going to talk about nutrition. That's the next bullet point. Work on your nutrition during the holidays because this is a great time of year to like do more cooking, do more meal prep, get more into eating 3 meals a day and having healthier routines in terms of your brain's ability to access caloric energy because you're probably not going to be outside as much. There's less to do. The days are shorter. This is a great time to do more indoor activities, and cooking and meal prep and learning new recipes can be a great one. It can also give you, like, it's not weather dependent, unless you're grilling or smoking or something like that. You can do it indoors. You can do it on the worst weather day of the year, and it gives you something to look forward to. It gives you a passion. It gives you a pursuit. That's something I think we really need this time of year. Another thing I think we really need this time of year is to reduce social media use. Really, you could do this any time of year. And I think there's a strong case to be made that in general, human social media use is way too high. But I find this to be particularly problematic for people around the holidays because you're going to see a lot of probably unrealistically positive content on social media. If your social media stuff is anything like mine, especially like Facebook, it's 90% people who only post good stuff and 10% people who only post bad stuff. And I would like to think that I honestly have a pretty good life. And yet, if I spend too much time on Facebook and I see everyone's freaking matching pajamas and pumpkin spice lattes and perfect Christmas trees, I sometimes am like, what am I doing wrong? Why does my life suck so bad? And that's not even a true statement. But it's so easy for us to get into these competitive, comparative mindsets, and we end up feeling like we're the 0 point and everyone's doing better than us, except for those few people who only post drama and crises, which is a small majority of most people's social media feeds. So really, this is a time of year when we tend to spend more time on social media, again, because there's less to do, the days are shorter, but really, I think we should probably be doing the opposite. Because another thing I want you to try to do is remember that most social media is fake. I'm sure I'm not blowing your mind with that statement. You can probably think of a million examples. I saw one the other day. Some of you guys know one of my hobbies, something I'm into, is watches. So sometimes I consume watch related social media content. And I was watching a watch review from a not super well known guy who has like a ton of, like, this guy gets watches like every single week. I'm like, holy crap, how does he have that much money? He was shoplifting them. He got arrested for shoplifting watches. So if you watch people's, holiday hauls or whatever, I'm not saying this is the most common reason it's fake, but like that stuff might be stolen. There's so much just false crap out there. Don't take it too seriously. Don't compare yourself. Don't compare your life to what you see out there. It's crap. Most of it's fake. Your life is real, and that's why it looks worse, because real has flaws, and that's just unavoidable. You probably know this one already, but really consider getting a sun lamp. In many cases, if you have a diagnosis of seasonal affective disorder, which is not typically hard, not super hard to get diagnosed, you can just see your doctor, like your physician, to get a diagnosis of seasonal affective disorder. Most insurance plans will actually cover a sun lamp for you. They'll pay for it. Even if they don't pay for it, they're not absurdly expensive. I think Sam's Club sells them for like $100 or something like that. Sun lamps replace a lot of not only just the physiological reactions we get to sun exposure, but also the vitamins we get from sun and light exposure. Obviously, you're not going to get as much sun exposure. You're not going to spend as much time outside during the holidays. Physical health matters. Like another thing I say a lot on here is brain health. Physical health is brain health, and brain health is mental health. So taking care of your body means taking care of your brain. And that's something that's harder to do when there's like 3 feet of snow outside and it's -10. So sun lamps can really be a useful supplement during these winter months. Don't give in to pressure to overeat. This one also might be cultural, but Thanksgiving and Christmas in particular, again, at least in the Midwestern United States, are 2 days when it is very culturally normal to binge eat. And that's not great for our mental health. When we overconsume, when we consume large quantities of food, our metabolism kind of freaks out or panics a little bit, not literally because it doesn't think, but it recognizes on a physiological level that there is much more food in our system that needs to be broken down and digested than there typically is. And it draws a lot of blood flow to your metabolic system to break down this excess food. It draws that blood flow away from your brain in order to mobilize that, specifically the frontal lobes. And so your focus, your concentration, your emotion regulation, these things all start to decline. You need these things, emotion regulation in particular, you're going to need that. You're going to really, really need that. So don't let your stomach rob your brain of the resources it needs to deal with crazy Aunt Sally, because she's going to be there and you're going to need to be of sound mind to hold your boundaries with all her conspiracy theories. I don't have a crazy Aunt Sally. That was a random mix-up of people, but you get what I'm saying. Another one that's easier said than done, but can be really valuable. Find a new intellectual pursuit. If you can find something that you're interested in studying, learning about, reading about, listening to podcasts about it, watching YouTube videos about it, this can be a great way to get you through periods of time when you physically don't have as much to do as you typically might. I'm really into watches and fragrances. You guys know that. It's no big secret. I don't just like shop for them all the time though. I like to read news about them. I like to see what my favorite brands are going to be making. I like to read people's reviews of them. I like to watch videos of people talking about them. I can do this anytime. I can do this when the weather sucks. I can do this in the middle of a blizzard. And it gives me something to like occupy my mind. An understimulated mind is typically going to become a depressed and or an anxious mind. So if you can find something that you're just interested in learning more about, that can be a really key factor in getting you through the winter. Another one, as far as the holidays go, have an exit plan. If you're someone who is going to be at a lot of holidays and it's going to be busy and it's going to be stressful and it's going to be overstimulating, plan ahead of time how long you're probably going to stay. And even it can be really helpful to tell people this. Like, I will be there from noon to 3 and then we have to leave to go do XYZ thing. If you can kind of set those expectations, it helps people prepare so that when you leave, maybe before some other people might be leaving, people aren't like, oh no, where are you going? I didn't expect this. Make sure they know. And sometimes it helps if you're there with someone, like a spouse, for example, to have almost like a safe word. Because you might be in a situation where like you need to leave and you're about at the end of your rope and you're sitting around a big table and you can't, you could, but it may not be comfortable for you to just say like, hey, spouse, I have to leave now. So if you guys can kind of agree upon a way that you're going to communicate that to one another that wouldn't be, obvious or offensive to people around you, that can help with your exit plan. Don't internalize people's judgments. This is often a time of year when you're going to hear a lot of perspectives, a lot of opinions, some of which may seem targeted at you or offensive to you. You might hear people say, you're too quiet, or you talk too much, or you eat too much, or you eat too little, or what. I don't know why, but people just love to comment on our behavior around this time of year. You're probably not going to be able to stop yourself from physically hearing it. But you don't have to let it in. You don't have to take it seriously. You don't have to validate it. You can hear it and know that this person thinks it, and then you can ask yourself, do I agree with that? Do I think that's a problem? And if you decide, no, I don't agree, you don't have to challenge that person and like engage them in an argument, but just remember it for your own boundary, that doesn't get to come in because you don't agree with it. Here's a tricky one. Share your grief with safe people. Another reason that the holidays tend to be difficult is we tend to be more aware than we are through the rest of the year of people who are not here anymore for one reason or another. And so the holidays are often a big grief trigger because we might have memories of like all the family being together, and maybe now it's like there's only some of us because of death or divorce or whatever else. And what a lot of people do is they don't want to, quote, ruin the holidays and bring everybody else down. So they just sit silently with their grief and hold it inside. And what's so sad is a lot of times many of the other people around you might be feeling the same, or at least some of them. You probably know your family and you know kind of who's maybe more like you than other people. Do not be afraid to let somebody know, like, man, I'm really sad grandma isn't here. That can be such a healthy bonding experience for your family and such a healthy grief experience if you have reason to believe that they'll respond to it appropriately. You don't need to keep it inside. You don't need to keep it to yourself. It can actually help people to know, because then everyone there is like thinking they're the only one. Because you look around and everyone looks fine, and then every single person is like, wow, I'm the only person who misses grandma. What the heck is wrong with me? But you're probably not. But you'll never find out unless you share it. On a related note, grief related note, don't try to replicate missing things. Focus on novelty instead. We often try to like maintain traditions that maybe were started by people who are gone now. But sometimes this just ends up feeling like a sad version of what we really want it to be. Like if grandma always made cinnamon rolls for Christmas and you try to make grandma cinnamon rolls, unless you nail it, if it's different at all, sometimes the simplest little thing like that can be such a massive grief trigger because it just reminds you of who or what is missing. If your holidays have changed a lot and they're kind of a shadow of what they used to be, consider doing something completely different. Consider doing something novel, like get Korean barbecue or something like that. Something that doesn't remind you of anything, so you're not constantly tempted to compare it to what you really wish it was. This should be a no-brainer, and this is a very practical one, but have appropriately warm clothing. The amount of people I see that come into my therapy office when it's 10 degrees and they're wearing like a hoodie, it's a large number of people. It's like, well, it's no wonder you hate winter. You're cold all the time. Like, you're going to be a little cold no matter what, but you could be less cold than this. It doesn't have to be this way. And if you have really good winter clothing, I'm talking like thermals and stuff like that, you can go outside most days. I go for a walk every morning, even in the winter, unless it's like dangerous, like -20 or something like that. I have these really good thermals I got from Cabela's. I am toasty in almost any temperature and you can have that with the right equipment. It doesn't have to be miserable, just be prepared for it. Make sure all your light bulbs work. Another practical one. This is a dark time of year, and it gets dark early and it stays dark for a long time, and even during the day it's often pretty dark. Your house doesn't have to be dark though. And there's nothing that makes like a dark world feel even worse than when your house is like dingy and half your light bulbs are burnt out. Get your light bulbs working. Maybe even think about some brighter LED bulbs. This can really make a difference during the holidays. Last one, I know this has been kind of a longer video, but I had a lot of ideas for you guys today. If you do a New Year's resolution, just do one and do it in stages. Don't do the stereotypical, like, my New Year's resolution is to get in shape. And so I will now run 2 miles every day and eat this super clean diet and like massively overhaul my life. That's an okay end game goal. That's not your starting point though. And that's actually like several things. Like exercise and nutrition are two very different things. Yes, they're part of the same ecosystem, but they're two very different challenges. And trying to do them both at the same time, those are huge life changes. That's why most New Year's resolutions fail. They're too grandiose, they're too big. Pick one thing and then maybe think like, what would be my 12-month plan? Like month one, I want to work out 5 minutes a day. Month two, 10 minutes. Month three, 15 minutes. Have an escalating plan so that it starts simple so that you can actually set yourself up for success. This is by no means a comprehensive list. It would take me hours to tell you every single thing I can think of, but these are some of the most critical winter and holiday survival techniques that I've seen help a lot of people. Quick reminder, if you have any interest in checking out Magic Mind as a mental performance shot or as a nutritional supplement, I will have a link down below that you can use to check it out. As always, I hope this helps. Take care, stay safe over this difficult season, and I will see you guys next time.